All right, if you're working in tech right now, chances are you're integrating AI at an absolutely breakneck pace. But here's the thing. Are we actually stopping to ask if that AI is fair? If it's transparent? If it's even trustworthy? That's the huge question we're tackling today, with a real hands-on Agile playbook for responsible AI. Let's jump in.
To really understand why this is so critical, let me tell you a story. Back in 2023, a huge e-commerce company made a pretty horrifying discovery. It turns out their fancy, cutting-edge AI recruiting tool, it had a really dark secret. You see, the AI was trained on years of the company's own hiring data, and that data was just packed with all the unconscious biases humans have. So the AI learned to penalize resumes that had words like women's, like captain of the women's chess club, and it automatically favored applicants from universities that were historically male-dominated. The result? Hundreds, maybe thousands of perfectly qualified people were just tossed aside before a human ever even saw their name.
Now, this isn't just some scary story. It's a really important question for every single Agile team out there working with AI. How do you stop your tools from making these exact same mistakes? That's what we're here to figure out.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into AI's ethical blind spot, especially in Agile. Then, we're going to unpack the high stakes involved and lay out a clear framework for being responsible. After that, we get to the fun part, a practical playbook for your sprints. And we'll wrap it all up with a real-world case study to see it in action.
Here's the paradox we're facing. Agile's biggest strengths are speed and efficiency, right? But when it comes to AI, that can actually be a huge liability. If we're not careful, AI can supercharge our work, sure, but it can also take tiny hidden biases and amplify them into massive problems that become impossible to defend. We have to build an ethical check into the system.
So, why is this such a big deal right now? Honestly, the stakes have never been higher. Integrating AI isn't just like adding another little feature. It's introducing a whole new class of systemic risks that we have to get ahead of.
First up, you've got what's called the amplification problem. And here's the key thing to get. AI doesn't just invent bias out of thin air. No, it's way more insidious. It finds the biases that are already hiding in our data, in our own decisions, and then it puts them on steroids, scaling them up and turning little human errors into large-scale automated discrimination.
Then you've got the black box challenge. And this is a real head-scratcher. Many of these AI systems are so mind-bogglingly complex that even the folks who built them can't fully explain why it made a specific decision. For Agile teams, we thrive on understanding the why behind everything. So this kind of opacity, it's a massive problem for accountability.
And that leads us straight into something called the responsibility vacuum. Think about it. When an AI makes a call all on its own, who's on the hook for it? The developer who wrote the code? The product owner who wrote the story? The company that supplied the data? If you can't point to who's responsible, accountability just evaporates. And that's a really dangerous place to be.
And listen, this isn't just some philosophical debate. Regulators are already on the move. Just look at the EU AI Act. It takes a risk-based approach. Some AI is straight up banned. But if your AI is in a high-risk area, like hiring or healthcare, you're going to face some seriously strict rules about testing, documentation, and having a human in the loop. The legal ground is shifting under our feet. Okay, so how on earth do we navigate all of this? The answer is to adopt a dedicated framework for responsible AI. And this isn't about slowing down, not at all. It's about building smarter, better, more trustworthy products by making ethics just as important as code. This framework is really built on 5 core principles. Think of them as your North Star. We've got to ensure fairness. We have to protect data and privacy. We need to make our AI open and explainable. We have to keep humans in control of the big decisions. And, of course, the whole system has to be strong and secure. These are the pillars you build trust on.
All right, theory is great, but let's get practical. How do we take these big ideas and actually bake them into our day-to-day Agile sprints? It's time for the playbook.
It all starts right where you'd expect, in your backlog. We need to start writing what are called ethical user stories. These aren't your typical feature requests. We're talking about things like fairness stories, transparency stories, or privacy stories that turn these big, abstract goals into real, tangible work the team can actually tackle.
Here is a perfect example of what one of these fairness stories looks like in the wild. See how it's not some vague hope? It's a concrete, testable requirement. The team can design for this, build it, and then prove that they've met the goal.
This is how you make ethics a formal part of the process.
And that same thinking carries right over into your sprint planning and your reviews. You have to actually schedule time for bias testing. It won't just happen. You need to prioritize building features that make the AI less of a black box. And during your sprint reviews, you should be asking tough questions. Is this new feature treating all of our users fairly?
And finally, this is where the rubber really meets the road. You make it official by updating your definition of done. A story isn't done anymore just because the code is written. It's only done when bias testing is passed, the explainability docs are complete, and a privacy review is signed off. This turns good intentions into real, non-negotiable quality checks.
But does this actually work in the real world, or is it just a bunch of extra meetings that slow teams down? Well, let's look at a case study from a healthcare startup that was building an AI tool to help doctors triage patients.
So this team discovered their early models had some serious bias based on race and even what kind of insurance a patient had. Not good. So over the course of 8 sprints, they systematically wove these responsible AI practices into their workflow. They started with the foundations, writing those ethical stories, then they moved into detecting and fixing bias, then built in transparency, and finally set up ongoing monitoring.
And the results? They were nothing short of dramatic. Before they started this whole process, their fairness score was hovering at a pretty dismal 55%. But after those 8 sprints of focused work, they boosted it all the way up to 95%. That is a massive 73% improvement across different racial groups, just an incredible turnaround.
But here's the real kicker. This wasn't just about doing the right thing. Because the doctors and nurses could now understand and, more importantly, trust the AI's recommendations, adoption of the tool shot up by 45%. Building trust wasn't a cost. It was a direct driver of business success.
So, what are the big takeaways from all this? First, responsible AI isn't optional anymore. It's absolutely essential. Second, Agile teams like yours are in the perfect position to make this happen. And third, as we just saw, these practices don't slow you down. They actually make your product better and more effective.
And that really brings us to the final question I want you to take back to your own team. Take a hard look at the AI you're building or using right now, and just ask yourselves, is this a tool that we can truly, genuinely trust? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.